My name is Olivia, and I am 27 years old. I got laid off on a Tuesday. It was clean, corporate, the kind of meeting where they thank you for your contributions and slide a severance packet across the table like it is supposed to soften the fall. I did not cry. I did not ask why. I just took the envelope and walked out. I went home to Charlotte and did the responsible things first. I checked my bank app and updated my resume, telling myself I would land on my feet. I had no idea my sister, Chloe, was already paying $1,200 to set my life on fire behind my back. Have you ever felt like the invisible one in your own family? Drop a comment and let me know where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. I would love to know who is part of our community. By Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed. While I was staring at my resume like it had personally betrayed me, it was my landlord, Mr. Miller. His voice had that careful, practiced tone people use when they have already decided to screw you over. He did not waste time with pleasantries. He told me someone had reached out to him directly and offered $1,200 extra to end my lease immediately. I asked him if he could even do that. My original lease term had ended months ago and rolled into a month-to-month agreement. Normally, that meant notice and time. He agreed, then said he was not filing an official eviction. He was offering an early termination agreement. If I signed it, I would have 48 hours. He said he would waive the next rent payment, but he did not promise anything in writing on that call. I asked him why he was entertaining it. He did not pretend it was about principle. He said turnover was expensive, but a vacancy would let him reset the rent to current market rates, and the $1,200 made the inconvenience worth it. He repeated that he felt weird about it, which was just his way of staying comfortable while taking the bribe. When I asked who had made the offer, he finally admitted it was my sister, Chloe. I stood on my balcony, the Charlotte humidity clinging to my skin, as my life rearranged itself without my consent. I had just lost my paycheck. I did not have a new one lined up. I did not have enough cash to put down first month, last month, and a deposit somewhere else on 48 hours notice. And now, my sister had paid over $1,000 to speed up the worst week of my adult life. I called her. I did not open with a speech. I asked one question: did you pay him to do this? Chloe did not deny it. She did not sound guilty either. She talked like she was doing me a favor, like this was a push I needed. She kept it light, almost amused, explaining that she needed my apartment to serve as a temporary content studio for her new PR launch. To her, my housing was just a storyline she could edit for her brand. I ended the call before I said something she could use against me later. I reached out to my parents, Gregory and Karen. I was not asking them to fix my life or give me money. I simply asked if I could stay in their guest room while I figured out work. They said no. My father framed it as a lesson in self-reliance. My mother framed it as motivation. They used the kind of language that makes cruelty sound responsible, saying they loved me while refusing me a roof. Anger was not loud this time. It was clinical. My compassion had been a luxury they had overdrafted for years. I realized I had been the silent investor in their version of family, and the dividend was homelessness. I stopped expecting a sudden reversal. I stopped waiting for them to remember they cared. I realized I had less leverage than I thought, so I stopped arguing and I stopped pleading. I hung up the phone and opened my laptop. I did not search for apartments. I searched for a name I had not called in 3 years: Alexander. He was my grandmother's former estate attorney. I realized it was time to stop being a daughter and start being an owner. I drove back to my building the next morning with an empty trunk and a tight feeling in my throat. I told myself I would keep it practical, get in, pack what mattered, and leave without making it a scene. The parking lot looked normal from the street, the kind of place where nothing dramatic ever seems to happen. But the moment I stepped into the hallway, I knew I was already late to my own life. My key did not work. I tried it twice, then once more slower, like that would change the outcome. The lock had been replaced. I stood there for a second, staring at the doorknob like it was a stranger's. My name was still on the mailbox, but the door just wasn't mine anymore. I looked down the corridor and saw the piles before I reached them. There were cardboard boxes, trash bags, a laundry basket I recognized, and a shoe rack I had bought online because it was cheap and good enough. Everything I owned was stacked along the wall as if it had been sorted by someone who did not care whether it stayed clean, dry, or intact. A couple of neighbors walked by and did not make eye contact. I could not blame them. In their place, I would have done the same. There is a specific kind of humiliation in seeing your life reduced to whatever fits in a box, especially when you did not get to decide the timing. I crouched and started checking what was there. Some of it was intact, some was not. A glass frame had cracked, one trash bag had torn open, and a spill of clothes and bathroom stuff had smeared across the floor. I gathered it back up with shaking hands, not because it was precious, but because leaving anything behind felt like admitting I was not coming back. I grabbed my research files first, then my grandmother's old medications. I remembered sitting with her for hours when the house felt too quiet. I was the one who drove her to every appointment and filled every gap because someone had to. I was the invisible caretaker, while Chloe was off spending my parents' money to look successful. I had been the silent investor in their version of family for 27 years. Now, I realized my affection had been a subscription, with me footing the bill. I kept wondering, what did I ever do wrong? I lived in a house where love was a variable expense, always being cut to balance the budget. This was the survivor's invisible chain. It is a prison without bars, a psychological cage known as learned helplessness. When you are raised to be useful rather than loved, you learn to survive on the scraps of attention they throw your way. You stay because you believe that if you are just helpful enough, the balance sheet of their hearts will eventually show you as an asset. But entitled people do not see assets. They only see a supply line. And the moment I stopped being convenient, I became a burden. I loaded what I could carry into the car, making decisions based on weight instead of value. I held a box of my favorite books for a second, then put it back down because it was too heavy, and I did not have the space or the strength. I told myself I would replace them later, even though part of me knew that was a lie. When the trunk was nearly full, I sat in the driver's seat and stared at the steering wheel until my vision blurred. I was not crying in a dramatic way. It was more like my body was leaking stress because it did not know where else to put it. I drove to my parents' house with the remaining boxes stacked in the back seat of my car, hoping against my better judgment that the reality of seeing me homeless would trigger a memory of compassion. I did not even make it past the foyer. Gregory and Karen met me at the door, their expressions as rigid as the decorative columns on their porch. I did not ask for money. I asked for the guest room for a few nights while I sorted out my next move. My father did not flinch. He looked at me and said that if they gave me a place to sleep, I would never find the drive to succeed on my own. He called it a lesson. My mother stood behind him, nodding as if my desperation was just a curriculum she had approved. They used the kind of language that makes cruelty sound like a professional responsibility. Karen told me they were doing this because they loved me, even as she watched me walk back to a car filled with trash bags and broken photo frames. When I ended that interaction, something in me finally went quiet. I stopped waiting for someone to remember they cared. I realized then that my parents did not want a relationship. They wanted a subordinate who accepted their version of discipline without question. The night got colder, and so did my phone. I saw a notification from the family group chat and tapped it without thinking. It was a video from Chloe. She was in my childhood bedroom, the room I had just been denied. She was doing a get ready with me video for her PR launch, using my old vanity as a backdrop for her luxury skincare products. She looked into the camera and laughed about dead weight and how some people just cannot handle real life. The comments from my cousins were already rolling in, filled with laughing emojis and praise for her brand aesthetic. I spent the afternoon inside the car, making lists I could not afford to complete. Find a job, find a room, find a way to retrieve my life from a sidewalk. My phone battery was low from all the calls I had made, so I dimmed the screen until it was a faint, mocking glow in the dark. I drove to a large lot a few miles away, where I thought I could park without drawing attention. Night came early, the way it always does when you are watching the clock instead of living your life. I locked the doors and tried to sleep sitting up. The air inside the car went stale, and every sound outside felt too close. The seatbelt buckle dug into my hip whenever I shifted, a physical reminder that I was now an occupant of a space not designed for rest. I watched headlights sweep across the windshield and flinched each time. I was not afraid of the strangers outside. I was afraid of the truth inside. I was watching the headlights of my family's entitlement pass me by, their comfortable lives continuing on a track I was no longer allowed to follow. They had coordinated my collapse, and they were sleeping soundly in a house they believed was theirs by right. But as I stared at the dark dashboard, I reached into my bag and touched the manila envelope Alexander had given me years ago. I was at rock bottom, but rock bottom is a solid place to start a foundation. I found the attorney's contact and stared at it until my pulse slowed. His name was Alexander, a man who dealt in the cold, hard currency of facts and ironclad legacies. I met him on Monday morning in a quiet public library study lounge, neutral territory with strong Wi-Fi and a bathroom where I could wash my face without a neighbor watching my collapse. The room smelled like old paper and filtered air, a sanctuary for those who needed to turn chaos into procedure. Alexander identified himself and kept the conversation tight. He did not offer a hug or a sermon. He offered documentation. He opened a leather portfolio and began explaining the details of my grandmother's trust. "The house was left to you in a protected trust," Alexander said, his voice as steady as the desk between us. "Gregory and Karen are there because you allowed it, not because they have any legal right to the property. In the eyes of the law, they are merely occupants at sufferance." I listened, and the guilt I had been carrying finally started to feel less like love and more like conditioning. Silence does not earn respect from people who feel entitled, it just gives them room to expand. I told Alexander to begin the process of reclamation. He outlined the steps in plain terms: notices, filings, and timelines. He drafted a formal 48-hour notice to vacate a document that would put a deadline on their denial. "There is something else you need to know," Alexander said, and the shift in his tone made the raw nerves in my stomach tighten. He pulled a document from the file that looked like a common business transaction, but it was a ghost in the deed. Gregory had expanded his consulting work 2 years ago and needed capital. He had taken out a business loan for $85,000. He used the trust house as collateral, Alexander explained, sliding the loan agreement toward me. My heart rate spiked. I had been barely out of my teens when I signed papers I thought were formalities to help him qualify for better rates. But Alexander pointed to a specific signature on the final deed of trust, my signature. "The bank accepted this because they believed you authorized the risk," he said, "but I compared this to the estate papers and the university documents you provided. It is a signature mismatch. Forgery is likely. The kill shot landed." Gregory had not just used me as a silent investor. He had committed a felony to secure his unearned comfort. He had used my future as his personal safety net while telling me I needed to hit rock bottom to learn a lesson. "This is no longer a family dispute," Alexander noted, his expression grim. "This is criminal fraud." I felt a strange sense of clarity. Anger was not loud, it was accounting. I authorized Alexander to serve the notice and move forward with the loan demand. My father was about to learn that paperwork does not pause for family meetings. The library lounge doors opened with a heavy thud that ignored the silence of the room. I did not have to look up to know it was them. I recognized the way they moved Gregory, leading with the aggressive stride of a man who expects to be obeyed, Karen following with her face arranged into a mask of maternal concern, and Chloe bringing up the rear, her eyes darting around as if assessing the brand aesthetic of my collapse. They crowded my table, trying to shorten the walk and widen the impact. "What have you done, Olivia?" Gregory asked, his voice a controlled hiss that vibrated with suppressed rage. His hands were shaking, and he hated that I could see it. I did not stand. I did not offer them a seat. I just looked at him from across the table, my pulse as steady as the library's Wi-Fi signal. I did exactly what you told me to do, Dad, I said. I hit rock bottom, and I found the truth buried there. Karen reached for the edge of my chair, her voice starting to crack with practiced fragility. We're your parents, honey, she whispered. We were trying to help you. We can work this out if you just stop this madness. I let her finish, then asked her what she thought would happen when they pushed their daughter out of her home 48 hours after she lost her career. She could not answer. Chloe finally stepped forward, her confidence already beginning to leak away into calculation. Do you really own the house? She asked, her voice high and thin. I did not answer her with words. I pulled the certified deed from my bag and slid it across the mahogany table. It's mine, I said. It has been mine since the estate closed. You three have been living in a performance of ownership while I paid the property taxes. I watched their authority evaporate in real time. This was the illusion of the empty wallet. My parents' power was a shell, a status they had rented, using my grandmother's money and my silent compliance. There is a profound difference between having wealth and being a person of value. Their position was a shell bought with an asset they did not own, and the moment the deed was revealed, they had no internal foundation left to stand on. Gregory tried to shift into negotiation mode, promising support if I would just pause the notice to vacate. I was not interested in promises that appeared only after I had leverage. I pulled out the $85,000 business loan agreement and pointed to the signature. The bank called Alexander this morning. I said, my tone clinical. They're reviewing the file because the signature on this deed of trust is a forgery. Gregory's face went the color of old ash. Chloe looked at me with a new kind of horror, realizing that her $1,200 bribe to my landlord had not just kicked me out, it had triggered a total financial and criminal collapse for the family. The power had flipped. They were not shocked by what they had done. They were shocked that I had stopped playing along. The calendar stopped feeling theoretical a few days later. The legal notice did exactly what notices are designed to do. It put a sharp, undeniable deadline on denial. Alexander kept the process clean, methodical, and properly served, proving to my father that his tantrums carried no weight in a court of law. Ethan Caldwell, my father's business partner, called one last time near the end of the month. He did not try to lecture me about family loyalty or tough love anymore. He admitted the bank had gotten nervous the moment my legal demand hit their system, and their biggest clients were starting to ask questions they could not answer. He wanted a settlement that would remove my name from the business loan immediately. Alexander handled the negotiations directly, ensuring I never had to sit across from Gregory to trade feelings for facts. The offer that landed in writing was a settlement of $65,000 to release my portion of the cosigner obligation and remove my name from the loan going forward. It was clean, immediate, and enforceable. I accepted. When the $65,000 hit my account, I did not celebrate with a grand gesture. I went straight to the impound lot, paid the storage fees, and got my car back before it could be sold at auction. Opening that trunk was the first time I felt like I could breathe. I touched my belongings, my research, my grandmother's things like they were physical proof that I had not imagined the last 2 weeks of my life. I used the rest of the settlement to pay off the small debts that had piled up during the chaos and set aside a significant chunk as an emergency fund. I never wanted to be that exposed again. My parents moved out on the day of the deadline. There was no heartfelt goodbye or a cinematic moment where they suddenly realized the depth of their cruelty. They packed their lives into a truck and left for an apartment they could actually afford on Gregory's real income. His business did not collapse overnight, but the hits were real strained cash flow, shaken clients, and the kind of crushing stress that does not disappear just because you tell yourself it is tough love. Chloe took hits too, but in a way that felt like poetic accounting. That $1,200 she used to bribe my landlord was not spare cash. She had put it on a credit card. Once the family money got tight and the parents moved into that cramped apartment, her funny idea turned into high-interest payments she could not dodge. She tried to blame me for the fallout, but blame does not lower an interest rate or repair a bridge you burned for entertainment. Karen tried one last time to pull me back into the old pattern. She left a voicemail asking what would make things right, her voice trembling with the same manipulative softness I used to mistake for care. I did not call her back. I knew the honest answer. Nothing could put us back where we were, because the version of family they wanted required me to accept mistreatment without consequence. That version of Olivia was dead. I changed the locks the very first day the house was empty. I set up mail forwarding, installed cameras on every entrance, and froze my credit with all 3 bureaus. It was not because I was paranoid. It was because I had finally learned what entitlement looks like when it gets desperate. Gregory sent a text later that night, a long list of how hard their new life was, as if their struggle was a coupon that could erase what they had done. I read it once and did not respond. I blocked their numbers one by one, including Chloe's. I told Alexander that any future contact would go through his office, and only if it was legally required. A week later, I started my new job. It was not a miracle, but it was stability. I bought basic furniture, replaced the items that had been damaged in the hallway, and kept my budget tight. The house felt quiet, but it also felt safe. And for the first time in 27 years, that mattered more than nostalgia. This is my letter to those of you who are still standing on the edge, wondering if you are the difficult one for wanting to be seen. I spent my life being a silent investor in people who only valued me when I was convenient. I realized that people will call you selfish the moment you stop being a resource. They will label your boundaries as cruelty when those boundaries block their unearned access to your life. If someone can harm you and still expect your loyalty, they do not want a relationship, they want a supply line. Family can be a source of strength, but shared DNA is not a lifetime contract for abuse. Respect is the only contract that matters. If respect is not there, you are allowed to choose distance, even when it hurts, and even when other people do not understand. If you are in the middle of something similar, protect the practical pieces first. Know what is in your name. Read every word before you sign. Keep your own copies of the truth. Build a small emergency fund, because survival gets expensive fast when you stop being a doormat. And when you finally set that boundary, set it clearly and protect it like the legacy it is. Thanks for staying with my story. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and keeping your dignity, leave a comment with what helped you and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.